Good day, girls and boys. My name is Tepiso. I'm from Sci Enza Science Center, University of Pretoria. The topic of today is food chains and food webs. So we cannot discuss food chains and food webs without discussing the eating habits of animals. So animals are divided into three categories. So we have the herbivores, we have the carnivores, lastly we have the omnivores. Now the herbivores are animals that feed on plants. The carnivores are animals that feed on meat or other animals. And then we have animals that feed on both, which are called the omnivores. Now let us move on to our food chains. So what is a food chain? A food chain is a flow of energy from one organism to another. So now there are trophic levels to a food chain. The first trophic level is called the producers. What are the producers? The producers are plants. So these are the organisms that produce their own food. Now what would feed on the plants? Can you take a guess? Yes, a giraffe. A giraffe would eat the plants. So a giraffe is a primary consumer. The third trophic level is an animal that would feed on the giraffe. Can you take a guess? Is it a lion? Is it a cheetah? Is it a cow? If you said it's a cow, then you might have to correct yourself. So basically a lion. So a lion feeds on other animals. Okay. Now we've got animals that feed on dead animals. What do we call those animals? We have a vulture. And that is the fourth trophic level, which is the tertiary consumers. Now, what would feed on the tertiary consumers? Remember, the tertiary consumers will be dead. So what feeds on the tertiary consumers? What would feed on the tertiary consumers would be the decomposers, and this would be a decomposer. Let us have a look at a food chain of an owl. So we have a flower over here. A millipede would feed on a flower. A frog would feed on a millipede. A snake would feed on a frog. Lastly, the owl would feed on a snake, which means that energy is being transferred from a flower to a millipede. Energy is being transferred from a millipede to a frog. Also, energy is being transferred from a frog to a snake. Lastly, from a snake to an owl. Okay, now that we've discussed what a food chain is, and that we've also discussed a food chain of an owl, let us discuss an ecological pyramid. So an ecology or an ecosystem is basically an interaction of organisms in an environment. So we're going back to the trophic levels. Remember, we've got the producers, the consumers, and the decomposers. Okay, so now we're gonna start with the first trophic level that we never discussed previously. Now, where do all the organisms get their energy from? They get their energy from the natural resources. And what are the natural resources? We have air, we have the soil, the sun, the water, and the ocean. Now, all of this will transfer their energy to the producers. So what are the producers? We have a cyanobacteria, we have an algae, the third one is grass, lastly we have the trees. Right, so what would feed on the producers? Remember, the primary consumers. What would be the primary consumers? A fish, an insect, the browsers and the grazers. What is the difference between the browsers and the grazers? The browsers are animals that feed on trees. The grazers are animals that feed on grass. And the two animals are called the herbivores. Lastly, insects. Now, what would feed on these animals? The scavengers and also the predators. Remember, predators are animals that prey for themselves. Scavengers are animals that feed on the dead. Now, what consumes all of this? Human beings. Human beings are right at the top of the ecological pyramid. I would like us to discuss this. Do you think if we remove the human beings from the ecological pyramid will remain the same? Let's put it to a test and see if it will break or remain the same. So the ecological pyramid remained the same. You see, we are the consumers of the ecological pyramid. We are the ones that the world can survive without. If we remove the natural resources, do you think the ecological pyramid will stay the same? Must we put it to a test? Let's see. Oops, it collapsed. So this is a better reason for us to look after our natural resources because they are irreplaceable. Without them, the ecological pyramid will collapse. Girls and boys, remember we are from Sci Enza Science Center, University of Pretoria. Thank you very much.